بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. So I want to talk about again the factors that divide us, right, and then make us weak. Because one of the things that we're experiencing right now is the extreme weakness of the ummah, right? That we cannot do anything in the wake of the Gaza genocide, right, by Israel, right, and supported by the U.S. and the West, right. So, young people, they need to know why are we so weak, right? And so I'm trying to answer those questions because usually, our youth is not allowed to ask questions openly, right? So, so one of the factors I think, in my point of view, has divided us significantly is, are the rigid interpretations of Islam. Now think about a big circle, right? It's an analogy my sheikh gives. I really like it. So think about a big circle, right? And we are all, anyone who's the right aqidah, and they fit into that circle, right? What happens is that if you historically, if you see that there have been the Sufi approach to Islam, and then there has been the non-Sufi approach, as I call it, right? So the Sufi approach has been, and I've talked about this in quite a lot of detail in my previous videos. The Sufi approach is very, accepting. It tries to expand or make the size of this circle bigger, right? The rigid interpretations of Islam try to make that circle shorter, right? So that they start excluding, they become exclusionist. There are like misguided puritans, as I call them, right? They try to make that circle rigid and then small and small, so that people they start excluding people, and then they find a reason to sometimes cause chaos and call the people who are excluded from that circles kafirs, and start killing them and stuff like that. So this is what I say: if you don't like the Sufi interpretation of Islam, then the thing on the other side is much worse, because there is a fitna, and al fitna to ashaddu min al qatl, because the rigid interpretations of Islam cause fitna, right? And so this is what we're seeing: the rigid interpretations of Islam became the dominant interpretations of Islam in the last 100 years, especially the last 5 decades, right? And those interpretations have spread the more extreme and more rigid version of Islam, so that now Islam is portrayed as a negative and a rigid religion in the media, right? But if you go to history, right, Islam was much more accepting of other cultures, and we were much more tolerant. Which was the Sufi era, right? Which was the now I know that a lot of people, they get triggered by the word Sufi, but they don't know history, right? Most of our scholars are, major scholars of this ummah were Sufis, right? Imam Ghazali, who is still called Hujjatul Islam. If you talk to an Arab alim, everyone calls him Hujjatul Islam, rahimahullah. So Imam Ghazali was one of the biggest proponents of Sufism, right? And Junaid Baghdadi, rahimahullah, and even Imam Ibn Taymiyyah was a Sufi. If you check his books, there is strong evidence that he was a Sufi from the Qadri Sufi tradition. So anyways, we have to somehow, we have to talk about these things, that we need to somehow address and curb and control the rigid interpretation of Islam to spread in the Muslim world, because these exclusionists and these takfiris, they are messing up everything and dividing the ummah. Because if you make that circle smaller and smaller, what happens is that you exclude people, you get divided. So this is that core of that. Remember this circle, right? You have to find an optimal length of the circle, a size of the circle, so that it's not too big, so that you start including like the Christians and the Jews in that circle also. Obviously that's not good also. But then you don't want to make it too rigid and too small, so that you start excluding even the Muslims out of that circle, which is what is done, which is what is the dominant interpretation and approach these days. And now we have to rethink of our approach. We have to rethink what we have been doing. Otherwise, we're going to still stay in this big mess, and this division is going to make us weaker and weaker. Jazakallah for watching. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.